This podcast is presented by the University of Kansas Health System. If you have an urgent orthopedic or sports injury, the University of Kansas Health System has a Saturday morning walk-in clinic at I-435 in Nolan Overland Park. For more information, go to kansashealthsystem.com/sportsmedicine.
And welcome back here in the program here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Soren Petrel with you. Let's talk some Chiefs football. The man who covers the Kansas City Chiefs for the Kansas City Star, Sam McDowell, joins us here in the program. Sam, it's a victory Monday. Much better than discussing a second straight losing Monday. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Soren?
Good. And certainly impressed by at least the Chiefs offense, right? Like that's one thing. All is right in the world when the Chiefs are hanging big numbers offensively. Is there anything not to like about what they did offensively?
Offensively, no. I mean, I thought Patrick Mahomes had his best day. I thought the offense as a whole had its best day. I thought the offensive line, especially the interior of the offensive line, had its best day. You know, it was the most complete offensive performance of the season. In terms of the way they rushed the ball and in terms of the way they passed the ball. I know they've had bigger numbers throwing it, but I just thought they were most efficient yesterday than what they've been all season.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think, from a standpoint of being able to run the football, they've now put together a couple of them back-to-back. And, my question is one of the things that I was asked on Sunday Sound Off last night was about, how can an offense be so good that they can score on 6 out of 7 and can they keep it up and that kind of thing. And I thought, not only were they able to score, but I think they really did play complementary football. They put 42 points on the board while also trying to drain the clock. I mean, that is, and we can talk about the defense here in a second, but that is about as efficient as it gets when you're not only wanting to make sure you score every time and you don't allow yourself to be stopped anywhere but the end zone, but you're also trying to be deliberate and make sure the other team doesn't get the ball. And do you believe that was part of the strategy, was to keep their defense off the field?
Yeah, we asked Andy Reid something similar to that at the post-game press conference. And he basically said, I don't go into the game wanting to have an exact balance or wanting to run the ball more this game because it's this team, or wanting to pass the ball more because it's that team. It's just the way the game plays out and what you're seeing defensively. And I actually do think there's a lot of truth to that based on the way they opened the game versus based on the way that the game played out. They called 3rd down and 1 run plays. I know the goal line that they did some trick stuff, but they called a couple 3rd and 1 run plays specifically because I think the looks that the Eagles were giving them. And also because of the push that Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey and Joe Tooney were getting so consistently in the interior. The first 3rd and 1 run to Michael Burton, the offensive line pushed the defensive line 3 yards back. By the time Burton even got touched, he was 2 yards past the sticks. And so I think the balance that they had and the way they were able to drain the clock was specifically because of just how dominant that front line was.
Are we seeing the chemistry come together, or is it just the Eagles suck?
I think it's a combination of both. You and I talked on your pregame show yesterday that I said it should be a big day for the run game, specifically because the Eagles were ranked, I think, as the 4th worst rush defense in the league, and that's despite having Fletcher Cox on their roster. So I think that the strategy yesterday was to put 2 bodies on Fletcher Cox, let the rest of your guys win one-on-one, and that's exactly how it played out.
Yeah, I think it is a big step forward for the offensive line, and we've been saying, I do think opponents matter, right? But it wasn't an easy challenge to get the Cleveland Browns front the first time you're trying to come together, because as much as we can talk about training camp,
exactly,
training camp and preseason and everything, you're not getting live fire really go at you and test your reps until you get into the regular season, and so that was a difficult assignment to have to go at that the first time out. But now, I think there is a feeling that, hey, maybe things are starting to come together for the offensive line, and maybe this offense is going to go back to being the kind of explosive one that can hang 40-something every single time out. And I think important as well, and we touched on this, you mentioned the Central Bank of the Midwest pregame show, for 2 straight weeks, Tyreek Hill had really been limited, really taken away 2 games ago. The other guys stepped up and had a big game. Last game, I think he had 6 catches for 50-something yards, right? He was relegated to kind of the shortstop. It was back to being big play Tyreek Hill, which if you're truly a number 1 wide receiver, and truly a great offensive mind, right, you should not be able to take away your most important piece. And I think important yesterday that Tyreek Hill got going again. You agree?
Yeah, there was an interesting comment that he said after the game. I'm literally on my computer here, so I'm trying to get it so I can get it word for word for you. But he mentioned the fact that
was it F-bomb this or F-bomb that, or
that came later.
Okay.
That came to Vahe's question. You know how Vahe is; he always draws out the F-bomb to people. But he said, I feel like each and every week people expect me to be this and people expect me to be that. And so that's how he ended one question. So I asked him a follow-up. I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, I'm always going to be me. I don't care if I have 200 yards. I don't care if I have 50 as long as we win. And that people expect on Twitter, he says, that he hears from people when he doesn't have those 152 touchdown games, mostly from fantasy owners, he said. So he's expected. And so my thought on that, though, is that's sort of the territory you're in now. Partly with this team, but partly, you've earned that reputation as a player. And I think that this team is now in a spot to where those expectations are there. And frankly, those expectations should be there. When you've made 3 straight AFC championships, you've made 2 straight Super Bowls, you've won one of them, you've got Patrick Mahomes, there's no reason to think you're going to have a drop-off. Those are the expectations that come with that. And those are the expectations you need to live in, and you need to find a comfort level playing under that umbrella now.
Is it me, or is it starting to become almost comedic in how nobody cares about the numbers in post-game after they win, but as soon as they lose, Eric Bieniemy is talking about the numbers, right? Like they're awfully big about, well, all I care about are the wins and losses until they're losing, and then everybody points to the numbers. I mean, Eric Bieniemy was asked about, teams catching up to the Chiefs' offense and Patrick Mahomes, which I think after a couple of losses and Tyreek Hill being kept in check for a couple of games was a legitimate question. And, and he's, well, no, I know because we're putting up the numbers. Right here, Tyreek Hill is like, I don't care what the numbers are as long as we get wins and losses. Well, that's great. So I assume you cared about the numbers the last 2 weeks because you got losses. Right? Like, am I the only one that's noticing the kind of theme here?
Well, there's a difference, right? I mean, because the one numbers there at the enemy references would be team numbers. The number that Tyreek Hill's referencing are individual numbers. But I think that this team does get offended when they lose. So I think that's probably your broader point, is that they don't like to answer a lot of questions when they lose. Now, what team does? But this is a team that's not used to losing, especially not. They hadn't lost back-to-back games in 2 weeks, and I don't think they liked a lot of the questions that they heard last week. I actually even asked Patrick Mahomes about that after the game, about what he thought about all the questions that they had over the past couple of weeks, and he kind of said, we were expecting to win too, and that's the mindset they've been playing with, and that's the broader story of this team. Is they had gotten into this spot where they expected to win so often that they had got past the cliches of every detail mattered, and they feel like over the past couple of weeks, and I know that they lost, of course, to the Chargers, but they feel like over the past 2 weeks they've gotten back to that mindset at practice, and they feel like that's what led to the performance that you saw yesterday.
Yeah, I guess the bigger, and I hear what you're saying about team numbers versus individual numbers. For Tyreek Hill, they've played 4 games, they've won 2 of them, and the 2 that they won, he had big numbers. So I'm almost, I get what he's saying. I mean, listen, I was disappointed in I get everybody's excited, but when you've had time for the game to be over, like I get frustrated when people act like it's an emotional game. Guys can't be expected to control their emotions out on the field. I find that amazingly, short-sighted to begin with. But when you've had time to shower and get dressed and get ready for a flight, and then you come out and talk to somebody, you can certainly get yourself together. So I thought his antics were disappointing in post game. But like, I think the point is, when his numbers are big, to his credit, right? To his credit, he's had big numbers in 2 games they won. He had small numbers in 2 games they lost. Like, it is important for him to have a big day. It's clear this offense needs him to have a big day, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. And, obviously other teams see that too. I mean, they know when they slow down Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce that the odds tilt much greater in their favor than they otherwise would. If you try and make McCole Hardman and Demarcus Robinson and Byron Pringle beat you, it's much tougher for those three guys to beat you than it is for the two I mentioned earlier. So which is why the attention has gone to Tyreek Hill that it has. I was a little surprised that the Eagles didn't shadow him even more attention than they did. But I do think it was more. They gave him more attention than the numbers would indicate. You know, when you see a guy have 11 catches, 186 yards, and 3 touchdowns, you'd probably assume that they didn't throw their best cornerback on him, that they didn't double team him. You know, there wasn't safety help. There was on some of his plays. I think Patrick Mahomes, whether he wants to outwardly admit it or not, didn't just go with the guy who was most likely to be open on a play based on the coverages. I think he made more of a point to get the ball to Tyreek Hill yesterday than he normally does.
And did Andy Reid make more of a point to get him open?
Yeah, I think you have to after those past couple of games he had. And I understand, you know, like you just mentioned, I mean, the guy had 6 catches, you know, in week 3. And we view that as, hey, you've got to get this guy more involved. But it was just the impact of those catches that makes us say that, right? So I think Andy Reid, absolutely, when you've got a couple back-to-back games like that with your top option, and like you just said, I mean, you lose both of those games. I mean, it's no secret to the coaching staff that they're better when Tyreek Hill's more involved. So absolutely, I think there was a point to get him more in the game yesterday.
We're talking with Sam McDowell here in the program. You know, how big was it to prove that they can go win without a big day from Travis Kelce? 6 targets, 4 catches, 23 yards. It looks like the Eagles' plan was to take him away, or, you know, the Chiefs just didn't look his way. I would tend to think more so that Philadelphia said, okay, we're not losing to this guy. And the fact that they can win. I mean, so far, you could be like, well, what happens if they take both the guys away? Well, that's pretty hard to take 2 different receivers away. But they've proven now that they can certainly win when Travis Kelce doesn't have a big day. Like I said, they haven't proven that they can win without Tyreek Hill having a big day, and maybe that's where Josh Gordon comes in when he's ready to go. But, you know, they did win without Travis Kelce making a major impact, and I would think that, you know, that's not something you want to make a regularity, but it should be something that creates some confidence for the team that, you know, you don't have to ride just 1 or 2 guys.
Sure, but I do think most teams try to take both of those guys away, and like you said, I mean, it's easier said than done, but that is team strategy. I mean, and it leaves everybody with single coverage without safety help otherwise. But to me, if I'm defending the Chiefs, that's what I try and do. You know, I put a linebacker on Travis Kelce, and I've got a safety ready to go anytime he crosses the first down marker, or basically 10 yards deep. With Tyreek Hill, I'm shadowing the safety his way every play. And I realize that that's more difficult when those guys are on the same half of the field. But, I think that's the best strategy to defend the Chiefs is make those other guys beat you. And we'll see if Josh Gordon has the ability to change that. It was interesting. Josh Gordon was here in Philadelphia warming up with the team yesterday. And it's not typical for all the practice squad guys to get on the field and warm up. So that's part of their expedience to get him back on, or to get him on the field and ready to go and to join the team. I mean, Patrick Mahomes was the guy throwing passes and warm-ups. So I think that they feel like he came in great shape, perhaps even better shape than they were expecting him to come in. And they think that he could be ready maybe even sooner than they expected when they signed him.
We're talking to Sam McDowell here in the program about the Kansas City Chiefs. Large win as they get to 42 points, 42-30, the final score. Defensively, Sam, how would you describe the performance by Chris Jones? I'll give you, we discussed this earlier in the program, but how would you describe Chris Jones's impact on the game?
I think the fumble play was a good microcosm of his entire game. You had one play where he's trying to make something happen and just can't do it. There were a couple plays because it was deep into the third quarter where I thought, you know what, we just haven't seen Chris Jones hardly at all today. And I paid attention only to Chris Jones on a couple of plays. And on both of those plays, the running back came over. Chris Jones, whenever he sees where the running back is lined up on a shot, because the Eagles are, of course, in shotgun. And usually a running back is flanked either to the left or right side of Jalen Hurts. And on every play, Chris Jones stands over the ball. Then wherever the running back goes, he goes to the opposite side and basically kicks the other defensive end to the running back side. On both of the plays I watched, the running back came across the line of scrimmage, so across the mouth of Jalen Hurts, and chipped Chris Jones on that play. Now, that's two plays that I paid specifically attention to. I don't know exactly how often that happened over the course of the game, but that's something Steve Spagnuolo talked about last week that they noticed. And I think that they felt like getting Chris Jones to the edge was going to get him off of these constant double teams, and it hasn't worked out that way. And, I mean, they're smart enough to know that you can double a guy on the edge as well with chips. And if that's the attention that Chris Jones is getting, you and I talked about this in the pregame show. Once Frank Clark is healthy, I think we're going to see him rotate more on the inside than he has been. He did play some on the inside yesterday, but not as often as I think he will once Frank Clark is back in the lineup.
Do we like what we saw out of Michael Dana, and is that the answer? Is Dana at the defensive end so that Chris Jones can be freed up to go back inside?
Well, I think that his development for sure helps that out. Just him alone, can that kick Chris Jones inside? I don't think so. I think we need to see at least some sort of production out of a healthy Frank Clark to justify moving him inside permanently, or even, let's say, moving him inside for 75 to 80% of the snaps again. I think that you've got to have two guys on the edge that you can rely on. Frank Clark, I will say, whenever he's not getting pressure on the quarterback, the one thing he's always been pretty good about is setting the edge in the run game. And right now this team needs that. That's not been Chris Jones' strength, as he learns this new position. So if Frank Clark can at least be dependable there and get the occasional pressure on the quarterback, and it's a low bar for a guy making his contract that he's making. But I'm setting, I guess, the reasonable bar. What you're looking at as a coach, what can I get out of these players? And I think if Frank Clark can meet that expectation, then he can kick Chris Jones inside more often than he has been.
Well, how about the fact that Chris Jones is just not making an impact on the outside, whether it's because it's easier to scheme against him? I mean, at what point do you just go, okay, look, we had maybe the second best defensive tackle in football inside. Outside, we got a guy. Like Michael Dana made a bigger impact.
I don't disagree. I didn't like the move to Chris Jones from the outside because I've always thought that getting pressure from the inside is harder than getting pressure on the outside. And I think it's more disruptive to a quarterback when the pressure comes right in his face than it does when he's allowed to scramble out of the pocket one way or the other. I think Chris Jones is finding the difficulty of being an edge rusher. He's played defensive tackle, or I realized he was a defensive end in Bob Sutton's scheme, but he's played inside the tackle for his entire NFL career. And he's played that way since college too. So, I think asking a guy to move positions at this level is a lot more difficult than probably even the player anticipated it would be.
We're talking to Sam McDowell here on the program from the Kansas City Star. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll continue to talk about the defense and the playing time that was there. Some of the historical monuments that were achieved in this game. Sam McDowell covers the Chiefs for the Kansas City Star. More with him when we come back. You're in the program here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Soren Petro with you as we talk Chiefs football with Sam McDowell, the Kansas City Star's Chiefs beat writer, joins us each and every Monday as we break down a victory Monday for the Kansas City Chiefs. And Sam, on the defensive front, we did see more of Juan Thornhill. Do we think he's figuring things out? I think the defensive snaps, let me look here, 42% of the defensive snaps he was in there, 31 of 74 possible snaps. Is that what do we make of how much Juan Thornhill was able to get on the field?
Yeah, I think it's more about the personnel that packages that were required based on what the Eagles were putting out there comparatively to what we saw, particularly 2 weeks ago with the Ravens. Juan Thornhill's going to play basically when there's four wide receivers on the field. He's still in the same packages that he's been in for the first 3 weeks. Even though you saw him more on the field, it's not because of any, intention to get him more playing time. It's specifically he's still in those same packages, and those packages just happen to be more on the field yesterday than what they were in the first 3 weeks.
Was it progress what we saw out of this defense, or was it, as we said, complimentary football?
No, I don't think we saw progress yesterday. At one point, I'm sitting next to Sam Mellinger, our columnist, in the press box, and I think it's in the second quarter, and I just said, I'm shocked by this. I did not expect this defense to be a top 10 defense. I said that multiple times in the preseason, but I did not expect them to be the worst defense in the NFL. I didn't expect them to be a bottom 5 or even a bottom 10 defense. I thought they'd be in the middle of the pack. I did not see a reason why they should be so much worse than they were the last 2 years when they were 16th and 17th in the league in yards. And it shocks me. I can't believe just how bad they are. I can't believe just how often guys are out of place, out of sorts. There was a really interesting play to me yesterday, or sequence yesterday, because of Chris Jones's rotation. At one point, he comes off the field because he's tired. So Joshua Kando sprints onto the field. It's a 3rd and 1 play for the Eagles in the red zone. And when Kando sprints on the field, he realizes that, oh crap, there's already 2 defensive ends on the field, and Alex Okafor and Mike Dana. So what happens is you have a rookie in Joshua Kando that has to line up at defensive tackle for the first time in his career. And so the Eagles respond by with a quarterback sneak, and if you watch the replay on it, Kando gets pancaked on the play, gets absolutely bowled over and falls on his back. And that's exactly where Jalen Hurts runs for his QB sneak, and it's a first down.
3+ yards
that's
on
the
a sneak.
That's the type of stuff that can't happen. I mean, that is just easy just substitution. This guy's coming off the field. Who's going on the field to replace? That has nothing to do with the scheme. It has nothing to do with your talent on the field. These are the types of mistakes that we've seen. On the first Eagles touchdown, Alex Okafor is sprinting across the line of scrimmage, trying to get from one defensive end to the other defensive end location. And Jalen Hurts has released the football before Alex Okafor even engages with the tackle, has not even made contact with the left tackle on the play. It's again another mistake that you can't see at this level. If you want, that has nothing to do with scheme, that has nothing to do with the talent on the field. It's just lining up properly. It's getting in the calls on time. It's the players knowing the assignments on time, and that's what is really costing this defense from not preventing them from being a top 10 defense, but even preventing them from being respectable and mediocre, preventing them from forcing a punt throughout the entire game. So I don't think that we saw progress in the areas that this team highlighted that stuff to us in the media last week. So that's why we're paying even more attention to it. And I just didn't think we saw any progress in that aspect.
To go back, no, I think what they did was not turn the ball over, right? And when you don't turn the ball over, you can mask the deficiencies that are going on your defense. When you don't turn the ball over, you eventually run into the end zone if you can't be stopped, which was the case in this past week. And I think the other games, the Ravens game and the Charger game, could have looked a lot like this as well, and it would have masked the problems. I mean, I'm with you. I didn't see the progress on the defensive side of the ball. I thought it was too easy for a quarterback that's still trying to figure out where he belongs in this game. It made Jalen Hurts look like a wily veteran. And people are wondering if Zach Ertz if he's done, and he ends up looking like a world beater at tight end. Devonta Smith is a very talented rookie. But his 105 very easily could have been, I think you could have determined on the ball that the touchdown that was called back, that he was forced out and came back in, reestablished himself, and that was a legal touchdown. I mean, I get why Nick Sirianni was pissed. I think they got a kiss on that one. And so, and he's a Heisman Trophy winner and everything, but he's still a rookie. I mean, they pretty much did what they wanted on the offensive side of the ball. And, I don't know. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think it was progress, and I think it's disappointing, because when does it get better? Is Frank Clark this missing linchpin that when he comes back, then all the pieces are going to fit together? And whether he's good or not isn't really the point. It's that everybody goes back to being in the spots they need to be, and that's when it's going to click. I mean, could that be it?
Well, we had someone yesterday that made the comment that once they get healthy, and that meant Frank Clark, Charvarius Ward, and Willie Gay. And look, I think they missed all three of those guys.
And Rashad Fenton.
But no, and Rashad Fenton. I think they missed the first three more than Fenton. But right. I do think Fenton would have played yesterday because Mike Hughes was bad. But no football team is ever fully healthy, especially on defense. And so if your whole mantra for the season is once we get healthy, we'll be fine. I mean, that's the formula that we saw play out yesterday. You're going to have consistent mistakes. I do think they missed Charvarius Ward. I do think they missed Willie Gay. I do think they missed Frank Clark. Whether he's looked up to his contract or not, I think he's better than the options they're putting on the field right now. But I don't think that those three alone completely turn around a defense. That team that we saw play yesterday and that performance that we saw yesterday would get absolutely destroyed by the Bills next Sunday night.
Yeah, we'll get to the Bills in a minute. How much do we just give it to, Steve Spagnuolo builds towards something in the second half? I mean, how much optimism and or confidence should there be that it is going to get better as the season progresses?
So I think, I give more credibility to that in his first year, of course, when the players are learning the scheme and they're learning to play together because they brought in a bunch of new guys. That's just not the scenario for this team. And I think the fact that this has gone on 4 weeks, like I said, it shocks. I'm very surprised by what we're seeing from the defense. And I don't know what I see right now that leads me to believe that there's going to be this just vast turnaround midseason like we saw after week 11 in 2019. Other than maybe if they can start lining up correctly, I feel like that is such a correctable issue. And it actually would make a pretty significant difference on the field. It's just, I don't know what to make of the fact that it's gone on for 4 weeks now.
It does speak to the fact that the scheme of the defense is based upon where they line up is based upon what the opponents do, right? And every offense is so multiple now and has, is seemingly dynamic. I guess you can understand that, but every other team seems to be able to line up. I mean,
yeah,
it's a fundamental problem that either there isn't the talent there that you need to just line up and play ball, or you can't align the scheme with the talent. I mean, I don't like saying this, but I mean, Steve Spagnuolo's got to turn a corner, right? I am optimistic that it will get better. And I know what you said, hey, in the first year where he basically said, hey, give us time and, judge us in the second half, not in the first half. And he called his shot and they were much better in the second half. But I'd like to believe that, he could take a look at what's going on and over the course of the first half of the season, even look at what are other people doing? Why is my team? And this is one where I think your analyst people have to be able to look around and watch other games. I think one of the mistakes teams do is they're just so mired in their own stuff. Well, we're doing this, and if we do this, and we look around, what are other people doing? Because other teams don't look like a fire drill right at the snap, right? They're lined up. They're ready to go against similar or same opponents. And I'm very open to the idea that Steve Spagnuolo is going to be like, all right, we got to junk this. We're trying to react to everything they do, and we're just going to have to be in a set. To your point that I think you said it on the Central Bank of the Midwest pregame show that, where a call didn't come in and, hey, Anthony Hitchens has just got to call something. Line them up in some defense. Any defense is better than no call, right? Agreed. And at some point, doesn't that have to, come into the mindset of Steve Spagnuolo, and doesn't he eventually have to land on that approach as well, that I'm trying to be super multiple and react to every little thing they do, and nobody goes anywhere until they come out of the huddle and start to get in their formation. I've got to stop. We've got to just get lined up and go.
I do think you're going to see to that point a little bit of a difference than what the defensive struggles went through 2018. Because right now it looks a hell of a lot like 2018.
Yeah.
But under Bob Sutton. But I do think that Steve Spagnuolo has the willingness to throw out stuff that's not working. Now, at what time period is that? What's the balance between my guys have to learn to play this way versus they're not going to learn to play this way and this isn't working? I don't know what that timetable is. He felt like they were learning the scheme for the first time in 2019, and so therefore he had to give it more time. I do think you've seen some adjustments so far in one area, which is the pass rush has been ineffective, and I think he's bringing more numbers because of it. So I do think he's not just sitting back and saying, hey, eventually these 4 guys will get home. We just have to be patient with it. I think he's made some adjustments there. Does he want to see Willie Gay and Frank Clark on the field before he makes those, before he throws out stuff that's not working? I don't know. The most interesting thing to me, Stern, is what you actually said on the pregame show, which is for years and years and years, offenses especially quarterbacks, like to see the way the defense was going to line up and then make the necessary adjustments to it. They knew who they were going to throw to maybe before a play because of the guys in man or zone and to cover 2 or to cover 3 or what have you. And we're seeing defenses or offenses say, we're not going to wait on you to get lined up because we think you're confused about what's going on. And I don't know whether that's a new trend in the NFL or whether I've just seen it for 4 weeks. I don't know whether that's going. I haven't seen a lot of that in the other games I've watched. But of course, doing this job, you're just watching, the primetime games. But I haven't seen that in those games. And so I think it's something about the way the Chiefs are showing confusion on tape. The teams have decided this is the way we have to beat these guys is to hurry up to the line of scrimmage before they can get set. And if the problem is you need a lot of time pre-snap, then that does lead me to believe that there is some more complication in your defense than there probably needs to be.
Let's take a break. When we come back with Sam McDowell, we'll talk about Andy Reid getting his 100th win, what that means. Patrick Mahomes, another epic day, 5 touchdowns for him. We'll do that next here in the program. Welcome back here in the program here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Soren Petro with you. Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star joins us as we break down the Chiefs' big win, and it was a big win. They needed it, and they got it. We a little nitpicky, or I don't know, maybe not nitpicky, just accurately portraying the fact that the defense still had its struggles, but when the offense is clicking the way it is, you can just boat race some people, which is what the Kansas City Chiefs did. Sam McDowell with us here in the program. Sam, Andy Reid gets his 100th win, does it in Philadelphia. First coach, 100th win for the Chiefs. First coach ever with 100 wins for 2 franchises. What does that mean? I mean, he's the first. I think it's always unique, particularly when it's not, something that's just an epic failure. When it's a success, and this is truly a success, what is the takeaway from that statistic?
Yeah, there's some times where you wish Andy Reid would break character for just a moment, and just acknowledge the fact that one of these things is a big deal, that it means a little bit more because of the city in which it came. And our guy Vahe tried to get him to do that yesterday, and he just replied, "What do you want me to do up here? You're trying to make me cry?" And just would not break character. But I think it absolutely means more that it came in Philadelphia. And I thought Patrick Mahomes actually made a really interesting point, which is he's eventually going to start being thought of as the Chiefs coach and not the guy who coached him here in Philadelphia. And the fact that he won a Super Bowl with the Chiefs, the fact that he's been to 2, but the fact that also he's been successful more than just under the Patrick Mahomes era. He's totaled 100 wins here. Who knows how much longer he's going to coach. But I think that's going to be the end of the story, is that he's going to be known as the guy who coached the Chiefs as much as he's known as the guy who coached the Eagles.
Yeah, I think we're headed there. I think the part that's not getting discussed is it's one of the great resurrections in the history of the game. He was let go. Now, I think in digging around that, I think Andy Reid was ready to walk away the year before, and he kind of did. My understanding is he kind of did the owner a solid and hung on for that last year, that the owner, like Andy Reid, saw the writing on the wall and went, all right, it's time for a change. Whether that's because he didn't have the same personnel power that he wanted, whatever it was, I think he was on his way out the door. And I think when you hear the Sean McDermott story about how Andy Reid let him go when we were interviewing him last year on the Zoom call during the playoffs, and McDermott kind of let it out that he was getting him out of there to go get another job. Like, don't hang around for this. It's time for you to move on. You're going to be fine. I'm doing you a favor because this is going to go bad. I think Andy Reid knew it was a year of transition for the Eagles. But let's be clear. I mean, he was not sent out with a parade in Philadelphia. The idea was that he was the guy who couldn't run the ball when he needed to run the ball, couldn't win the big game, could get to it, but couldn't win it. And, there were serious question marks about him. Now, the Chiefs paid him top dollar and jumped on him right away and won a bidding war. So I'm not saying that everybody thought Andy Reid was scorched earth. That wasn't the case, right? There were a lot of teams lined up that said, okay, let's go. We got a different situation here, and maybe it's just time for a change. And I remember I did the first one-on-one interview with Andy Reid when he came to town, and that's what he said. Like, hey, Philly needed a new direction, and I needed a new direction. But like, it was failure at the end, right? I think, he may not like that word. He may say, no, it was just a parting of ways. We could have kept working together. It could have been successful. But at the end, it was an ugly, bad year. It was the first bad year he had had since his first, which was all attributed to his predecessor, and rightfully so. And he came to Kansas City. And I think the other thing that should be pointed out is after that amazing 9-0 start, he went in the regular season 3-10 in his next 13 games. Or no, I'm sorry. He went 2-5 to finish that. Then he went 9-7. So what would have been 11-12 and then a 1-5. Wow. So 12-17 in his next 27 games to the 1-5 start and you can make it 12-18 when you throw in the loss, which was the second worst meltdown in playoff history to the Colts. That stretch right there, I took the calls. Andy Reid was not a Hall of Fame coach. He was the guy that, for a lot of people, Philadelphia made the right call on, and was not competent and not with the modern game. And to come from that low point of 1-5, coming off a non-playoff season where, he had now not been in the playoffs 2 of his last 3 years and was bailing towards a third in 4 years, to rise to the point that now people are calling him, Patrick Mahomes is calling him one of the greatest coaches ever. That it's more of a story of sticking to it and overcoming than people realize. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I had not really thought of it in that perspective, but that is a great point. And I'm sort of trying to rack my brain as you were talking about what other stories in the NFL sort of mirror that, and none really come to mind. But I'm sort of wondering if what's going on in New England right now is what's going on in Philadelphia the last couple of Andy Reid years. If maybe there could be some similarities there, but they're not getting rid of that guy. That guy won the championships, won those big games he was in, and which just prompts me to wonder if could Andy Reid have had this turnaround if he stayed in Philadelphia? And I don't know that the answer is yes. I do think that there was something to him getting a fresh start somewhere else. And, whether that was Kansas City, it's not like, of course, he inherited some great team in Kansas City. Now that they've made the trade for Alex Smith, so that team was different than the one that in the season in which it was coming off. But I do wonder if the fresh start, I think there's more to it than just the cliche, hey, we needed to do something different. I don't think he could have had this sort of turnaround in Philadelphia because of the way the past couple of seasons, because like you mentioned, the writing was on the wall and they just needed a change. But I think the man needed that same change as well.
Yeah. I listen, history is just going to kind of show it as this long tenure of all success, but there's a pocket at the end of Philadelphia and the start of Kansas City where he was, embattled. And to your point about, Bill Belichick, I do think there's a difference when you've won the Super Bowls. But I think there's a big, I think Belichick's got a better chance to make it stick and make the turnaround in Boston than Andy would have had in Philadelphia. But it's because he won the championships. And let's be clear, I think we're watching it, even though it was a very competitive game last night. I think the reason he won the championships is because he had Tom Brady. Had Patrick Mahomes or Donovan McNabb been Tom Brady and there had been a couple of Super Bowl rings, I think Andy Reid would have been able to make it go in Philadelphia. I do think, fans – and it's not that the fans make it. I think everybody else has the same questions that fans do around an organization, and that can make it toxic. When you have 6 trophies, you get more time to where people don't question you as vigorously, and I think you can keep the chemistry going in the right direction much easier. So I think you're right. I think there's an interesting parallel there. Mahomes being the biggest difference. And listen, not that anyone was questioning whether or not Patrick Mahomes should be the guy. That wasn't it. But for a couple of games and with 3 interceptions over the last couple of games, people were kind of wondering, and I think rightfully so, the question was asked to Eric Bieniemy, is the league catching up to the Chiefs offense and Patrick Mahomes? 5 touchdowns in this game, now on pace for 60 touchdowns and 17 interceptions with about 5,100 yards passing on a 17-game season. 60. Right, he's not just nipping the record at his current pace, throwing more than 3 touchdowns in 3 or more in every game. There's no problem with how Patrick Mahomes is playing. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, when you look at the interceptions, and I started to think about this after the interception he threw to Travis Kelce yesterday, there's a theme to 3 of the 4. Now, the one goes off Marcus's Tim's body, and it has to be caught. The other 3 are all so similar I think it prompts a bigger discussion. And the similarity is they're third down plays in which he's about to get sacked, and to where he makes a decision that throwing this football is probably not a great idea, but I think it's a better idea than just giving up and punting. In the last 2 years, I wonder if he throws any of those 3 footballs. But the way that I think that I'm getting my cues on the way this defense is playing from those 3 passes. He's decided that we can't afford to punt. We can't afford to get the ball back with 0 points on the board. And all 3 of those passes are a result of that mindset, that he's just trying to make something happen. And so we could try and make these big conclusions that he's being more careless with the football, he's turning the ball over more. But I just think he's reacting to what he's got on the other side of the football. Otherwise, I think he's played really well in this Philadelphia game. You know, he played really well in spurts of the Cleveland game. I did not think he was at his best against the Chargers, even outside of those 2 interceptions. But I think we saw a Patrick Mahomes that was more like the Patrick Mahomes we're accustomed to on Sunday in Philly.
Yeah, he's a guy that does the calculus in his head instantaneously. And the calculus right now is my defense is not going to protect us, so let's send it out there. What does it matter? And to me, I think all of coaching is coming around to this, that's why they're going for it more on 4th down, is like offenses are so good at going up and down the field. What's the difference in giving them the ball at their 20 or the 50? I mean, you're 2 plays away from them being at the 50. Every defense seemingly is taking away the over the top and the shell and, you know, all this stuff. They're going to get there anyway, so you might as well try to make a play and put more points on the board.
Yeah, and, you know, there was the game that I missed, which was the game in Baltimore. There was so much highlighted on that interception that Patrick Mahomes threw, and it really surprised me for that reason. It was a bad throw. It was not a good risk, but it was a third down play in which the alternative was punting. And I don't know what led any of us to believe in that Ravens game that the Chiefs were going to get a stop if the Ravens were on the 20 instead of taking over at their own 45. And I just think that should be part of the calculus in the quarterback's mind. And I do think he should take more risk on third down. I do think he should take more risk on third down when it's clear nothing's happening on the play, because the alternative is punting. And when your defense is playing like the way the Kansas City Chiefs defense is playing, that would prompt me to take more risk than I otherwise would.
Sam, great stuff as always, buddy. We appreciate the time. We will talk with you excuse me, next Sunday. I'm choked up talking to you, buddy. We'll talk to you next Sunday on the Central Bank of the Midwest pregame show when your beloved Buffalo Bills are the opponent. How exciting is that? The Kansas City Chiefs, the team you cover.
Those are playing pretty good.
Your favorite team, the Buffalo Bills. I mean, that's got to be exciting for you, right?
You know, I don't think this is one you can chastise me for, Saran, because I don't know if you've seen that the Bills are playing pretty good.
I don't know. Watch out for those Dolphins. They're awful crafty. They're awful crafty. If you don't catch those references, you'll have to catch more of our segments between Sam and I. Sam, great stuff as always, buddy. Take care of the little ones, and we'll talk to you on Sunday.
Hey, thanks, sir. I'm looking forward to it.